Lucky.
2,
3,
4, 5,
6.
Imagine a world in which every human is a perfect genetic construction. Every person has perfect eyes, perfect ears, perfect height, and perfect health. Though this sounds ideal, it may not be as great as it seems. In my 10th grade biology class, we heavily researched inheritable genetic modification. Inheritable genetic modification is a new eugenic technology that is beginning to be introduced to the American society. Germline technological advances in society would inevitably result in the expectation to construct a human into a biologically perfectible object. This technology as a whole would introduce major ethical issues and would result in a larger economic gap between the wealthy and the vast majority. Modifying genes is irreversible, therefore any error passed down through generations could be worse than a natural disease itself. In addition to the ethical concerns of genetic modification, the legality of it should also be heavily examined due to potential privacy and consensual violations. Today, I would like to inform you about the effects of genetically modifying human embryos. Inheritable genetic modification's roots originated in the 1800s, when farmers began attempting to modify genes to produce better crops. After some success, scientists moved on to the modification of animal genes in the 1980s. The first major steps for human IgM did not occur until the 90s when CRISPR was first introduced, and the United States FDA states, in their article titled Science and History of GMOs and Other Food Modification Processes, that the FDA approved the first consumer GMO product developed through genetic engineering, human insulin to treat diabetes. The 2000s held many successes for inheritable genetic modification, but the most profound was the creation of CRISPR-Cas9. In 2015, the FDA approved an application for the first genetic modification in an animal for uses as food, a genetically engineered salmon, which was a major step towards the societal acceptance of genetically modified organisms. Looking at the history of IgM, it is visible that it required several years between each discovery for it to finally be considered safe. Considering the first human trials for CRISPR-Cas9 were not fully approved until 2018, there may be several side effects that are not yet discovered for human genetic modification. Despite the approval dating only in 2018, a pair of healthy twin girls were born as a result of genetic modification were announced earlier that year. According to Tina Say, a biomedical journalist with a PhD from Washington University, a Chinese biologist announced that the twin girls with a gene altered to reduce the contracting HIV came crying into this world as healthy as any other babies, though without permission of the state. Arguably, one of the most profound potential consequences of inheritable genetic modification is the inevitable extension of the current economic gap already residing in the United States. Due to the complexity of the technology required to perform genetic modification, the average price of the procedure is likely to be far above affordable for most American citizens. The ability to modify embryos, whether it be for physically attractive features, removal of potentially harmful gene, or self-serving justifications, would only be available to the wealthy, and according to the Turkish Journal of Biology, Volume 4, pages 110 through 120, would ultimately result in some advantages in comparison to others in terms of various features such as mental and physical capacity. There will likely be no period of time in which germline modification will be made affordable to the majority of people. Therefore, the only proportions of the human race that will benefit will be those already born into wealthy and privileged households. According to the National Human Genome Research Institute, under the segment, What are the ethical concerns of genome editing, this principle could theoretically create classes of individuals defined by their quality of engineered genome in the distant future. The idea that only the top percentage of citizens would be able to afford the ability to better their lives of their already privileged children would drastically affect pre-existing societal issues such as marginalism, stigmatism, and discrimination. The basic procedures of genetic modification are still under some review. CRISPR-Cas9 is the main piece of technology used in removing or replacing genes. Scientists use a protein to remove and replace an ineffective gene that could potentially cause a disorder. According to Heidi Ledford, a reporter for Biomedical Studies A major concern with this technology resides in the fact that after Cas9 or a similar enzyme cuts up DNA, it is up to the cell to heal the wound. But the cell's processes are unpredictable. If one simple error is made, the genetic code can be entirely ruined, affecting all generations after the original mistake. Because of this, the risks and benefits of genetic modifications are not clear-cut. Many of the aspects are based on the individual's own ethics and what they believe to be worth the risk. The legal framework of genetic engineering is also relatively vague. The use of human genetic information and the measures that are necessary to protect individuals are under scrutiny by the Australian Law Reform Commission, and other countries are soon to follow. According to Terry Kahn, co-author of Genetic Privacy, an Evaluation of the Ethical and Legal Landscape, with new genetic information introduced family generations, an additional layer of privacy will also be required due to the unwieldy concept that is rooted in essentialism definition despite its centrality and importance in the body of bioethics. This could result in the establishment of regulations of preference to statute law, although they must remain flexible as the risks of inheritable genetic modification continue to develop. The introduction of inheritable genetic modification among humans will present great endless societal issues, cultural issues, and ethical issues across the globe. This eugenic technology involves the removal or altering of genes in order to construct features, remove diseases, or enhance abilities to the parent's liking. Although this technology could provide several beneficial medical services, it would also inevitably widen the economic gap between the wealthy and the average person. And any error within the genome would also be irreversible, resulting in a shared generational defect. Alongside ethical complications, the legal issues surrounding genetic modification, such as privacy concerns and human anatomical rights, also play a major role in the restrictions or total unauthorization of inheritable genetic modification. Inheritable genetic modification among human embryos is a great advancement in biological technology, but it will result in more issues in his work. Thank you.
Two,
3,
4, 5,
6.